Creating a management game often means being able to emulate every relevant part of the business at hand. Doing this is pretty easy for something like Roller Coaster Tycoon, but what if you're trying to create an emulation of something a bit more complex? Something that doesn't take place entirely where you can easily visualize it. That's much more of a challenge to do well, and it's something that the movies takes head on. The standard approach at emulating the process of making movies would probably be a ton of menus and a massive wall of text. But the movies take the stereotypically Molyneux approach and has you do just about everything in the game by dragging things around. And it actually works pretty well here. I'd say it works better than it does in most of his other games. Sometimes I did wish I could have just right-clicked something, but with all the things this game has you doing, sometimes it's nice for the game just to show you where you can drag different objects and people in your film lot and just let you go from there. In the game's main campaign mode, your goal is pretty simple: survive and make money. The game starts you off with enough money where it's basically impossible to lose, but your progression through the eras of filmmaking is pretty much an unstoppable march that happens at variable speeds depending on how well you're doing. You'd more or less have to try to purposefully wreck your own studio in order to actually lose. And even then, I'm not sure it's possible. The game's basic concept of progressing through the most important decades in the history of cinema is cool, but I wish there were more differences. Sure, the visual quality of your movies improves, but how your studio functions and looks, which is the vast majority of the gameplay here, doesn't really change that much. You do get some new decorative items, but it would have been really nice if it had reflected some of the other industry changes. But that lack of obvious changes to your lot's visuals over the years is a symptom of a much larger problem when it came to my enjoyment of this game, where its focus is. It really seems like instead of focusing on the management aspect of the game, which I was the most interested in, they honed in on the machinima creation aspect, the creation of the movies themselves, which you can finally control all the way from script writing through to shooting, with a ton of options to do exactly what you want to. But that's also what makes the movie so neat, is that you can choose to put your focus in either the game's macro or micro aspects without suffering too much. It's pretty clear that a lot more care was put into the game's micromanagement heavy film production aspects, but the macro management of the film studio as a whole is still fun for the most part, and you can just leave the production up to your underlings, choosing to wait and watch the finished product once it's complete, instead of exerting control over every aspect of the process. Like a lot of Lionhead's games, the movies puts too much of a focus on how things look instead of how they really work. In some places it ends up being helpful, but in others it makes what should be a simple process an absolute nightmare. But also, like a lot of Lionhead's games, there's a core here that's a whole lot of fun. There are all sorts of small issues that bug me regularly, like trying to manage the desires of all the individual characters on my lot, as well as constantly dealing with an array of tiny UI issues getting in my way. But the game has enough charm to overcome those problems and keep things interesting, which is basically the Lionhead mantra. Every Monday I look at a game that's at least 10 years old, what I would consider to be retro, and I see if it's held up today. If you like that idea, be sure to subscribe so you can see the latest videos. If you like this video in particular, be sure to hit that like button, and if you have an idea for a future video, be sure to leave a comment below. Thanks for watching.